Good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Phil Hager, and I have the honor of serving as your Planning and Zoning Officer. There's an ambitious agenda of activities planned for you today. I think you'll find it both educational and rewarding. My first task is a pleasure to perform, since I've been asked to introduce our county executive for opening comments. One of the most interesting aspects of the practice of planning is that people become planners through many very varied and different courses of both formal and informal study. Listening to Mr. Pittman as a candidate and then later as executive has been interesting and enlightening. After listening to him, one can't help but come away thinking, this guy may not have studied planning, but he clearly understands the importance and he clearly understands the concepts behind effective planning. As a staff person charged with implementing his directives, this makes my job both easy and difficult. But in either instance, it makes my job more pleasurable and definitely more rewarding. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our county executive, Steuart Pittman.
I'm glad you put it right out there, Phil, that I'm making your job more difficult, because I am, and that's But I did say right from the very beginning that the benefit of all that is that I do believe in planning, you believe in planning, and not everybody does. So we are going to do some serious planning in Anne Arundel County. I want to thank Cindy Carrier first, because Cindy Carrier is... she's in charge of long-range planning, and she's the person whose job I have made really difficult. And when I came in and said, let's do another 16 small area meetings, and let's do a big meeting here, and let's, and then they get to 200 registrations and say, okay, well, we got to cut it off because we're at capacity. And I email and I say, sorry, you want me to call and find another site? We're going to keep letting people in. So we just kept letting people in, and Cindy is just dealing with it, and dealing with it really, really, really well. So we all owe her a debt of gratitude. So this, to me, is possibly the most important thing that we've done since December 3rd when I took office. And, we knew coming in that we had to do more citizen engagement, more public input into general development plan. I mean, you can't have too much because we're talking about our future. We're talking about, the next 10, 20 years of what Anne Arundel County is going to move toward. And, but I didn't have a real plan. I just knew we needed more. And, but I had met with Paris Glendening during the campaign, Governor Glendening, and Smart Growth America, and I sat down with Chris Trumbauer, and then we brought in Matt Johnston, our environmental policy director over here, who has hit the ground running, and we all thought we need to bring in Smart Growth America, because these folks have been, for years and years and years, going around to communities just like this and helping guide people's thinking, new ways of thinking, creative ways of thinking about planning, because you and I are not planners. Maybe a handful of you are, but we know that we have these ideas and these visions. We know what we don't like probably more often than we know what we like, and we need some guidance. So it's fantastic to have Smart Growth America here to lead us through some of this. I want to just throw out some things that are going on, because in addition to the general development plan, the rules are changing. We're changing a lot of the rules, and that's going to change the way this group up here, our new Citizens Advisory Committee, which is all sitting in the front. Well, you're going to introduce them after me, so I won't go through everybody. But we have a new group guiding this process, who I think you'll like, who represents every community in Anne Arundel County. But the rules are going to change somewhat, so that's going to give us new tools to direct development, new tools to send it where we want it, and tools to stop it where we don't want it. And I want to run through some of that because it's all still in process. I've been relying on the law office, Greg Swain, on Phil Hager's office, on Matt Johnson with his ideas from environmental policy, and then, of course, Chris Trumbauer, who's our overall policy director, and Pete Barron, who's our legislative person. So there are lots of memos coming through about how we can sharpen the tools to limit development in the county and direct development. So a few of them. First of all, we got a new head of inspections and permits. I don't know if Greg Africa is here. He's not here. Okay. Greg has been coming to all of our budget town halls. We brought him over from the Department of Public Works, and his training was in environmental policy, and he's really understands that in inspections and permits, we need to do a better job, especially on these erosion and sediment control plans, on the construction sites, and he's put together a budget that we're going through right now that adds inspectors. We have had fewer inspectors than any county by far for the number of construction sites that we have, and that's one of the many reasons that the chocolate milk is ending up in the Chesapeake Bay. So we think that's going to be a big move forward there. Phil has also recognized that in order to do the kind of planning that we want, we need some staffing to make it happen. So we're going through that right now in the budget, and I'm not going to say anything about decisions that may or may not have been made, but you won't get everything you asked for, but you'll get some. Because I think everybody in this room understands that the planning department has been cut over the years. As development has increased, and the workload has increased and the staffing has decreased, and if we really want to take control of this process, we need staff to do it. We passed a bill, I call it the No More Turtle Run bill, where you no longer can transfer development rights into the critical area in Anne Arundel County. That was easy to do. We're working on forest conservation legislation. We joked a lot during the campaign with the delegates who are running about who is going to be able to pass a good bill first, the state or the county. I think we're going to win. And it will make it harder to develop where there are trees. I mean, that's the bottom line. It will become more expensive, and it will be more difficult. Details forthcoming. Adequate public facilities ordinance. We're also looking at. In fact, we had a bill that we pulled because there were some problems with it that we're still working on, where you really do have to improve, not just leave traffic the way it is, in order to be able to pass the traffic adequate public facilities law. And the one that really burns me up, and I never understood it, and they always said, well, talk to the lawyers, it's about the Constitution and all of these things, is that if you want a subdivision and there's no capacity in the schools, all you have to do is get on a waiting list, and in 6 years you do whatever you want. So whether we have schools or not. So it's forcing the taxpayers to build schools whether they want to or not, in places they may or may not want them. And there will be legislation that will basically do away with a waiting list. That will be forthcoming. It turns out we don't have to allow them after 6 years to build their subdivision. So thank you. That will be very, very controversial, and we're going to need people on our side. Impact fees, the folks in the budget office, bless them. There was somebody there who was really frustrated about the fact that in 2008, when the consultant told us what our impact fees should be for roads, schools, and public safety, there's 3 categories, that we chose to put them at about half of what they should have been. And he kept track over every year, every district, every category, how much money we left on the table because we didn't set the impact fees where they belonged. So $127 million got left on the table. 107 of that was for roads. Most of it was for roads. So we're doing a little interesting gimmick in the budget that you'll see that will create a fund to address that problem. Unfortunately, we can't go back to those same developers and get that money because the rate was set the way it was set. But we have to address the infrastructure needs. The developers have been the ones who tell us whether there's wetlands on the land where they're asking for their grading permits, and there have been some situations where there were wetlands, and had they looked on the MDE website, they would have seen them. Had we looked, we would have seen them. And then they get their permit, take the trees down, and lo and behold, they're wetlands. We're looking at changing that system so that they get checked on, and it's not just up to the developers. Phil Hager had already recommended to the previous county executive and moved forward on being a little bit more a little tougher on modification requests and not granting modification requests just because they'd been granted before. And so we're putting together guidelines for Phil's office to make sure that we really respect our laws, our local laws on the environment when we're doing modification requests. And we think that's going to set some rules that we can all live with. We're looking at having a land use officer. Anne Arundel County has had that in the past. We have Plan and Zoning, IMP, Department of Public Works, a lot of different departments, transportation, that all deal with land use. And we're looking at creating a position under the CAO that would coordinate for the county executive's office land use issues among all of those different departments. And we'll work alongside our environmental policy director as well, so that we can be a little bit more coordinated, and I will know what's going on. We also, I said during the campaign and called Smart Growth America, we talked to them about this, about putting together a proposal to look at the fiscal impacts of our land use decisions in the past and in the future. So we are often told that development creates the tax base that pays our bills, and then we find out later that actually the development created a lot of expenses that we didn't foresee. So we need better numbers on that, so we're gonna ask Smart Growth America to help us take a look at that, so that as we do the general development plan, we're looking at the fiscal issues as well. We're looking at long-term fiscal health of Anne Arundel County. One that is, I think, the most popular, the most applause I ever get is when I say, we're going to ban campaign contributions from developers when they have applications pending. This was an interesting one because we were going to go the route of Prince George's County and others where it's an ethics reform and you have to get it done at the state level, but it applies to your county. So we had to get our Anne Arundel County delegation to support changing the law, and then it would impact not them, but me as county executive and our county council only. They were a little uncomfortable with passing legislation that was going to impact the local politicians that were their allies, and there was a lot of resistance to it. And so what we did instead was we got authorization from the state to do pretty much whatever we want in this area, but do it at the local level. So we'll be we're now authorized, Anne Arundel County, they passed a bill authorizing Anne Arundel County to make its own decisions at the county council level about our own ethics on campaign contributions from developers with applications pending. So we're going to have a lot of negotiating to do with the county council, but we're going to come up with a bill. We're going to wait until after the budget's done. Nothing controversial till after the budget, and we'll have that legislation ready to roll very soon. When I came in, I shared what most of you had been telling us during the campaign with Phil and the Office of Technology, and said, why is it that there's not some map where you can click on a location and find all of the subdivision applications, the status of any application that's going on? I mean, the citizens should be able to get information about what's going on in their communities, land use-wise. And we were told that there's a contract underway, but it'll take 3 years to get it to the point where it's really working, where people can use it. And we said, well, gosh, 3 years is an awful long time. And as it turns out, 3 years is to be able to get all the back information into the system and all of that. So we do have a meeting with IT. We think that by mid-May, we're going to have at least a plan to be able to identify the parts that we have now that we can get online so that citizens can see it. And then what I've suggested we do, maybe it won't be that complicated and we won't need it, but that we go around and we do trainings for folks and for community groups about how to use the system so that people can stay on top of all these applications, all of these processes, because I know some of you, Berrywood community is one recently, have lost track, or somebody didn't send an email to somebody, or somebody just didn't have time to follow the process well enough. And then next thing you know, it's going before the Board of Appeals, and you don't have standing. There's another one that we're going to fix, is standing for community groups. And give people an opportunity to have a voice in the process. So, quite simple. So those are some of the things that we're working on that we think will be able to help to sharpen our tools, give citizens a little bit more of a chance in the process, but ultimately, hopefully, come out with an outcome, and that's going to be part of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and then us and Phil and eventually the County Council, a general development plan that doesn't just shut down development in Anne Arundel County, but that directs it to the places that we want it. And some of the big questions that I'm hoping that you'll think about, that I think about a lot, are what do we do about affordable housing, workforce housing in Anne Arundel County? I believe that if we want to make it possible for people to live here who work here, that we're going to have to figure out how to encourage and direct some of the housing that's built to be affordable for working people. And in some cases, that's going to be uncomfortable. Some people are going to say, well, that's all well and good as long as it's not in my backyard. And that's something that the General Development Plan exists for. So if we say that we have this as a priority and we want certain kinds of affordable housing and we want it done in certain ways, once that decision gets made, then it's going to be a little bit harder for some of the neighborhoods to say, no, but not in my backyard. So be it. We have countywide needs like that. Open space is one, of course, that everybody, I think, in this room believes strongly in. Anne Arundel County is a beautiful place. I always said that during the campaign. We have to preserve the natural beauty of this county, and that's why people are here. And there are some big parcels that we have to make decisions about, like Crownsville Hospital Center, and big green parcels that are still green. Navy Dairy Farm is another one. And even the Bell Grove landfill in North County, there's a big chunk of land. And whether we own it, which I don't support buying it because it's very expensive, we need to be on top of what happens with that chunk of land because that's a big land use question in North County. The corridors, Route 2 and Route 3, got to make a plan, right? Got problems, we all know it. It's state highway, but we can't just punt to them and say, well, they'll get to it in 50 years. So we have to have a plan there. And one that's near and dear to my heart that is also part of open space is agriculture and making sure that farming is commercially viable so that we don't have to buy all the land to preserve it. The people actually can keep open space and keep it working that way. And then last but probably most important, we have Ramon Robinson here in the room, head of our transportation department, is public transit, trails, all transportation. So if we don't figure out a way to get cars off the road and we don't focus our development on what you'll probably hear something about transit-oriented development, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, we do have places in our county, it's kind of fortunate that some of the places where people are a little bit more encouraging of development and where we need redevelopment, where there have been a lot of vacancies, happen to be near transit. So we have the Cromwell Station Mall right at the end of the line coming in from Baltimore. And we have, over in Laurel, we have a transit station at the racetrack that they're talking about reopening and creating a lot of transit-oriented development in that area. And then, of course, Odenton Town Center, the vision was transit-oriented development there, but we don't really have the parking next to the station, and so there are a lot of people who believe that there's a lot of opportunity there. So if we're smart about it, we'll be able to get the development into the areas where people can live and work and shop all in one area and have sidewalks, hop on their bike and ride the South Shore Trail down to Annapolis and connect the parts of the county that are green and make this a really, really great place to live, the best place, right? And hopefully figure out a way where we're all working in the same direction to get there. And I know that's a huge challenge, a little bit pie in the sky, but that's why we're doing this today. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I mean, I just think it's such a strong signal to everybody who works for county government, anybody who is in elected office, anybody who lives here, that 240 people show up on a Saturday to spend their day talking about planning. Amazing. We have all of our community engagement and constituent service staff over here. Raise your hand over there. Yeah, these folks are they're here because they understand that a big part of their job over the next year is going to be working on this. And we're going to hear more about visioning in small areas and a lot of other exciting things. So I will step down and listen from now on. Thank you.
So, nothing much going on.